Good morning. Welcome back. You're watching the broadcast. The number is 0791 478 990. The hashtag on Twitter, New Day KE. The short SMS code is 40920. We are, of course, talking about the sinking of Senator Sakaja with Victor Marende, anthropologist, commentator on governance, political issues. Watimah Kelly's youth leader, commentator on political developments in the country. And Wakili Philip Mwangale, advocate of the High Court, is equally a consultant on leadership and governance developments in the country. Nairobi County Senator Johnson Sakaja presented himself yesterday at the DCI Kilimani after being on the run since Saturday. The senator, who has since resigned as the chair of the Senate Ad Hoc Committee on COVID-19 pandemic, was briefly held and released Saturday morning after he was arrested for flouting the COVID-19 protocols after he was found drinking with friends at 1 a.m. on the wee hours of Saturday. Our political affairs reporter Jeff Chaimba caught up with him, and here is his story.
They say when the deal is good, you have to think twice. This was the case for the Nairobi County Senator Johnson Sakaja, who found himself in an ugly scene with the law enforcers in one of the bar and the restaurant centers located at the Dennis Pretty Road near State House during the curfew hours. The senator on Monday availed himself at the Kilimani DCA office to record a statement.
It is regrettable, but all of us make mistakes. No one is above the law. I'm not above the law. I have paid cash bill over here, and I will be appearing in court tomorrow, and the entire course of the law will be followed.
Sakaja, who seemed to have been overtaken by alcohol during the arrest, denied allegations of issuing threats to the police officers who demanded him to get back to the house at about 1 a.m. on Saturday.
The first thing I must say is that I, number one, take responsibility for having flouted the COVID rules on Friday. I was outside my home after 9, and that is against the rules. Sijatishia mtu, sina nguvu ya kufuta mtu kazi ama kutransfer mtu. Ni vile ile mambo mengine ambayo iliendelea ndio ilinionyesha ni mambo mengine. Yeah? Yaani hadi hata kupigwa ngumi mimi. But hiyo narrative nyingine kwanza kusema sijui ladies lounge. There's no place called ladies lounge. Ndio wanataka kikae ni kama nilikuwa sijui nafanya nini. Hakuna mali inaitwa hivyo. That place is along the street where I live, you know.
It is said during the arrest, Sakaja with their friends became violent, thus forcing the police officers to handcuff him, even as his colleagues flew away.
But the fact that the whole of Saturday and Sunday, more than 50 officers brandishing guns have been going to my residence. I'm not a fugitive. But on flouting the rules, I apologize to Kenyans, and I will pay the full consequence of the law.
The youngest legislator in the Senate doubles up as the chairman of the Ad Hoc Health Committee. However, due to the current tribulations facing him, Sakaja has since resigned from the committee.
I also wish to state that I resign from the Ad Hoc Committee on COVID, which I've been chairing. We have done a lot of work so far. I support the work that the government is doing, and the officers, I think they're doing a good job across the country. But because of that responsibility and the example that I need to set, I have this morning officially written to the Speaker about that.
The senator will tomorrow be arraigned before the Milimani Law Courts, where the charges before him remains unknown. He was released on a police bond of 10,000 Kenyan shillings. Reporting for Ebru TV, I'm Jeff Chaimba.
Gentlemen, good morning. And to come first to you, Watimah Kelly, when you look at the meteoric rise of Senator Sakaja to what transpired over the weekend, to now where he has been charged, found guilty, and ordered to pay 15,000 fine, in some way do you think that his resignation, the self-resignation of course, following the public uproar, is likely going to set the bar standard when it comes to state officials in committing to matters of accountability and in terms of the violations of the laws of the land?
Thank you, Mr. Ayubu, for having me in studio. I think it is a high time our leaders were accountable, both for their actions and their virtue of state holding office, in office. Kenyans have been asking our leaders to be accountable, and I think Sakaja has done it for the first time. Actually, this is the first time you are seeing a senator, or a seated senator for that matter, resigning from a seat in the Senate or where he sits. And I think that is a good step so far. But now we need to see more leaders taking responsibilities when it comes to serious matters. Because this is just about COVID-19. But the other serious issues where leaders have been mentioned, even in corruption and other serious cases and offenses, and yet they've never taken responsibility. So I think he's setting the standard, yes, but now we need to see more and more leaders doing the same.
Okay. Wakili Philip Mwangale, morning.
Morning.
When you look at the sequence of events from the weekend on Saturday to yesterday where he presented himself and the subsequent resignation from the committee he chairs at the Senate that's looking into COVID-19 pandemic, is it a case of perhaps setting a good example, or this is likely going to perhaps create a wider public perception that rule breakage can be a norm in the country?
First, I think we must get to the level where we normalize political responsibility and accountability, so that such actions as those of Senator Sakaja are not really strange in our eyes. But it goes to show where we are as a country when it comes to people taking responsibility for their actions. The fact that, it's a strange thing. Some quarters are even applauding him for taking that decision, shows that we are in a very tricky place when it comes to responsibility and accountability. But it's a good thing, what he did. I personally think that what he should have been apologizing for was the statement that he made on Twitter. He denied that he had been arrested, denied that he had come into contact with the police in the manner that had been reported, and that was a lie. So he should have been apologizing for the lie rather than the action, because anyway, he should have been subject
Where
to
he
the
said,
consequences of the law.
show me the OB number.
Yes. I mean, if we did not have a video, then he would probably have gotten away with that denial. So I think we should get to that point where people take responsibility. The other bit that is also important is this, that in as much as his actions on the outset might seem as the good thing to do, I am a bit skeptical when it comes to politicians, because it's difficult to separate the PR aspect from something that comes from a deeper reflection and conscience. So I don't know. I do not know whether it is PR, whether he's doing this out of his moral conscience, or a deeper reflection of the actions that he was caught in. Or maybe he's just doing this because, he was caught in the act. There was nowhere to run. There's a video, there's an OB number that you're disputing, and, you have to do the right thing. But anyway, it was a good thing that he came out and said he will step down from that committee. Yeah.
Okay. And Victor, to you then. I mean, the action of Senator Sakaja over the weekend led to deep national disquiet on the part of the public, because the parallel putting together or putting aside of what has transpired at some point in the county of Kajiado, where the Kotu Sekjan did convene a meeting, and we have seen more than 100 or thereabout leaders trooping to congregate in Kajiado County over the weekend. What transpired in Kakamega, Vihiga, and Busia counties. This to you, especially to the specific point of Sakaja, is it a political ploy, or perhaps sinking or bowing down to pressure now that he was cut pants down?
If you talk about caught pants down, then Sakaja was not caught, because I saw my deputy party leader having a big meeting in Kakamega contrary to the COVID-19 context.
That's Governor Oparanya.
I've seen the Kotu Secretary General do the same. And these have been done during the day. at least Sakaja was courteous enough to do this at night. And that does not qualify his actions at the ladies' club at night. But then, the ladies' dance club
In Kilimani.
it doesn't qualify at all. But then, when you come to what Sakaja is trying to show Kenyans, you know, the selection of a member to chair an ad hoc committee is not the responsibility of Kenyans. But then the COVID-19 containment measures were a placement from the office that is anointed by Kenyans.
That is the presidency.
The president. Now, it means that these are public guidelines that must be followed, and the public has a say of them, because then the person they entrust with the position is the person who gave these laws. So then when you look at what Sakaja was doing, if he wanted any meaningful resignation, Sakaja should not be the senator of Nairobi County right now. If he wanted at least to show Kenyans that he's taking political responsibility for what he did. As to what he is doing right now, I think is PR. There is some time back that Sakaja had his advertisement firm talked about, and the governor of Nairobi claimed that the company owed them over 40 million. And then the forestry department also claimed that the company cut trees irregularly without guidelines, without approval, and without anything. So then if he were to resign, then. Because that is a live case, it is a live matter, and he has we have no records of him paying that 40 million to City Hall. But we have records that he didn't pay it. So I think the mere PR by the Nairobi senator puts him in a very awkward situation. And if I were to do an awkward situation, I would say that Sakaja is a Sonko version that knows English and wears good clothes.
All right. Okay. Let me just query the accounts of Victor. You have mentioned the fact that what normally transpires over the weekend in the counties in Mulembe Nation and what Sakaja did over the weekend is just a matter of course, the daylight separation. But why do you think that the government is turning a blind eye on the gatherings that are convened by Eugene Wamalwa and the governors from Kakamega and Bungoma counties in convening congregations where we have seen people and leaders trooping there with no regard for the COVID-19 guidelines?
With no regard to COVID-19 guidelines, I'm not so sure, because I've not attended any of them.
How about the government's action in terms of...
What I know is that we have had meetings in this country contravening the more than 20 gatherings that have been chaired to the extent of even the president himself. So when we talk about floating of COVID-19 rules, it is the responsibility of each and every single citizen, president, governor, senator or not. We need to obey these guidelines. And I allowed what the CS for Health has been saying each and every single day. If a politician invites you to a public gathering, don't go, because when you get sick, it is your bill. I've had friends who have been diagnosed, and this is their bill. This is not the bill of the government. Okay. The government does not pay for your bill. So I think it is the responsibility of each and every Kenyan. And right now, it becomes more of our responsibility because some of the containment measures have also been removed.
Okay. Now, Wakili Philip Mangala, you wanted to comment, but let me just couple that with this question. The application of the law to what appears to be the class stratification of the leadership level at the top echelons and down bottom one, appears to be different, isn't it? And how do we need to end this perception of the class here on who the rules apply to? Because we have seen senior leaders who are in contravention of the COVID-19 rules.
That is a classical definition of impunity, because when you have what we have in this country, in the sense that the law applies equally across board, but obtains different consequences as you move up the social and economic class. That is the classical definition of impunity. Because yes, the law applies to all of us equally, but when some individuals are caught on the wrong side of the law, then the consequences that are assigned to those acts are minimal when it comes to them. And the political class is a victim here. I think, COVID-19 is not, the way they're handling the regulations and containment measures around COVID-19 just exemplifies what they have been doing all along. It is not that they have now found an opportunity to express themselves in that manner. They have been doing this, right from the word go. And the fact that you've mentioned political gatherings. I mean, the president in his directions was very clear that political gatherings remain banned. But these people are engaging in those same political gatherings. And they seem to have the blessings of the state because they have protection, police protection in those meetings. They have members of cabinet. In fact, it's members of cabinet who are spearheading those meetings. So you'd imagine that a cabinet that has come up with resolutions will be on the forefront in leading Kenyans towards making sure that we are adhering to these guidelines. And not just for the sake of, image. It is for the sake of protecting our lives, because we are at that point in time where it is these lives in this country that really matter. So if your actions go to show that you place a very low premium on life itself, then we are doing the wrong thing as a country. And just to mention the actions of the cabinet secretaries. Just yesterday, I think three or four cabinet secretaries
that's,
were,
including Macharia, Eugene.
Yes.
For development.
They were in Western Kenya.
Yeah.
And that was a mammoth crowd, the crowd they were addressing. It was not even 100 people, 200 people. These were crowds. And when I'm talking about crowds, I'm not talking about people who are spaced somewhere. This was a huge crowd. And most of them did not have masks. Most of them, it's just bizarre.
Okay.
It's bizarre.
More or less then, Watimah, yes, you have a point. Go ahead, please.
About the political meetings that you are having, I think the government is not being honest with these rules and regulations. As Victor and even Wakili has pointed out here, the president himself is the one who is saying this is the way to go. We are supposed to keep off political meetings. And then you find that he's the one heading these meetings, sometimes in KICC, even in State House. And then he allows the cabinet secretaries to go and hold such a meetings in Western Kenya. And then when the other side of the political divide tries to do the same, they are tear-gassed. They are arrested in the name that they are floating the COVID-19 rules. So you wonder, is this COVID-19, is this coronavirus being transmitted by the so-called the opposition side of the government, or everyone is transmitting this disease? So I think even in the first place, as a Kenyan, I'm tending to think that this virus is not there.
Really?
Okay.
Or it is there. It is there, but I don't know. I don't know, because when you see the regulations, Mwananchi is being told follow the regulations. But now the politician is not following the regulations.
Okay,
how are we containing the situation?
Okay, you remain a bit skeptical about the application of the law, to who it does apply to.
He's not skeptical about the law.
Okay.
He's skeptical about the
virus.
Well,
itself.
he will fit well in, of course, the Magufuli thinking, or if you may like, the Donald Trump or Jair Bolsonaro of Brazil, who have underscored the pandemic until a court had to order the Brazilian president to wear a face mask while in public. But if I may come to you, Victor, on that, while mentioning all these happenings across the country, or the occurrences, and then you have, as Kelly did mention, a meeting, of course, convened by the former Kakamega Senator Bone Khalwale, that security agencies dispersed or broke up because they are not BBI compliant, according to the statement they made over the weekend. Now, generally, when you look at this, why do you think then that the government is tying itself up in knots, that it has never done that, when we clearly see cabinet ministers who are not adhering to the COVID-19 guidelines, yet the Mwananchi is every time from the lectern lectured on by the senior Minister of Health officials to adhere to the COVID-19 guidelines? Why all this improper, fraction here?
Now, on BBI compliance or not, I really don't know. Because I've not seen Eugene Wamalwa saying that he's gathering because he's BBI compliant. But I've heard the likes of Boni Alwale saying that they have been dispersed because they support Tangatanga. Now, as a matter of fact, there is no party called Tangatanga in this country. There is no party called Hustlers. There is Jubilee, there is ODM, there is Ford Kenya. So if the subscription was based on these political parties, I would then comment authoritatively that members of this kind of political party are being favored by the state. But then favored by the state to what extent? Now, what the police did to the Tanga group, as they call themselves, was right, because such gatherings are banned. Now, the only question that needs to arise is that why was Oparanya and his team not tear-gassed, or why was the Kotu Secretary General not, and his team not dispersed? So we really need not to say that the government was unfair in dispersing Team A and not dispersing Team B. The only standard that should be is that political gatherings in this country still remain banned.
All gatherings, public gatherings,
Yes.
not political per se. But Victor,
even religious meetings are gatherings, and they have been allowed. So it is not all gatherings.
But we are seeing limited operation when it comes to even the places of worship, where we only have 100 congregants as needed by the government after the task force. But in your view, what's the difference then when the governors, that is Wycliffe Wangamati, Wycliffe Ambetsa Oparanya, Eugene Wamalwa, do convene a meeting, contrary to what Khalwale, Ben Washiali and company are doing in the western part of the country?
If I were to set the meetings apart, I would say this. Now, Eugene is a CS who is in charge of devolution. Now, the main tenets of handling this disease lies with the devolution docket, because then health is a devolved function. Now, Wycliffe Oparanya is the Council of Governors. So if they meet to that effect, and I was very clear that I have not attended these meetings, but then I would want to qualify them on the fact that they are meeting to see and get ways of maybe doing public participation and enlightenment on citizens on how to handle the virus.
But
because
Victor,
our leaders should
Victor,
also tell the people what happens.
Okay, well noted, Victor. Before Kelly, you'll come in. Before I go to Kelly and seek the sentiments of Wakili Philip Mwangale, the very clear point that you have mentioned is that the COG chairperson, Wycliffe Oparanya, does chair and is head of the COVID-19, of course, when it comes to the county level, while the devolution CS is in charge of the devolved governance, where health is a devolved function. But clearly, on all the meetings they have convened, they have never underscored the importance of COVID-19, leave alone raising awareness, concerns, and creation of public awareness. What they have clearly been talking about is Mulembe Nation politics, development tours, saying that we are better than the other team in terms of advocating for the needs of the Mulembe Nation. I mean, clearly this is political, isn't it, that you just want not to echo it?
If it's political statements that they do, I don't support.
Okay.
But then to this effect and to this day, I still believe that they also do enlightenment on the COVID-19.
I like your faith, Victor.
Yes, it's good that he has clearly made his point clear.
But the reality is that these people are not doing anything that is related to COVID-19, aside from the fact that they are flouting those rules. Theirs is a political engagement. I don't know if we'll discuss about the kinds of political machinations that are going on in Western Kenya, but that is what is happening in those regions. And the fact that people who should know better, you would expect that the chair of the Council of Governors should know better, should know that counties do not have the capacity to manage an upsurge in people requiring critical care in hospitals. You would expect that cabinet secretaries, you'd expect that leaders who have been elected by people to represent them, leaders who have an understanding of the capacity of our hospitals, the capacity of government itself to do testing and to manage the virus, should know better. They should be doing better. When you're meeting, a group of teachers' representatives, telling them about, how they should support what faction, nothing about that contributes towards enlightenment of the people. I mean, if they were flouting these rules just to make sure that citizens are actually getting the seriousness, in as much as that sounds paradoxical, but if they were doing that to ensure that citizens actually understand the seriousness of this issue and making sure that they are sensitizing the public, then that would be understandable, perhaps even forgivable. But they are doing this for political, mileage, for political expediency. And that should not be acceptable at all costs. We should not even be discussing, what needs to be done or what needs not to be done. The issue is they are flouting the law. That is the law. They are breaking the law. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they are having state protection in breaking the law is unfortunate and tragic.
Okay. Yes.
Just to add on the same and what you pointed out, these leaders never discuss anything to do with COVID-19, apart from the Luya unity, that we must unite, we are better than the other ones, we are good, we can do ABCD. So in the end, they're not doing anything about COVID-19, and yet they're being allowed to have these meetings. The question is, why are they being allowed to do the same, while the other side is being tear gassed and all that? So I think it is about time the leadership of this country, headed by the President of the Republic of Kenya, to walk the talk about COVID-19 and any other issue that is affecting wananchi of Kenya.
Okay, gentlemen, let's now shift attention to what's forthcoming next Monday. And Kenya is staring at another lockdown as the novel coronavirus or COVID-19 surges to all counties. Only 3 counties have not recorded cases of the pandemic. President Uhuru Kenyatta has convened an extraordinary summit with the governors from the 47 counties this Friday, which is likely to seal the fate as he addresses the nation next week on Monday.
Open is given conditionally.
Barely 2 weeks after President Uhuru Kenyatta partially reopened the country after months under the cloud of containment measures, including the cessation of movement into and out of some counties, the worst is now slowly but surely coming to pass.
Today we have hit one of the highest numbers that we expect to see in the country.
The daily rise in COVID-19 cases giving governors sleepless nights.
I still want to ask the Ministry of Health, in collaboration with county governments, to work towards improving the testing capacity within the county clusters.
At some point, even hinting at reclosure of their devolved units.
Note that the Ministry of Health has withdrawn ambulance services from all counties that support the movement of COVID-19 patients to facilities. This is a huge setback.
And their pleas seem to have landed on live ears, with the president now convening a meeting with the county chiefs to check the status of county preparedness. Given the rising numbers and the governor's pleas, the president is likely to make do his promise to reinstitute some of the containment measures 21 days after his last address to the nation on the 6th of this month, that is next Sunday.
In the next 21 days, we shall study patterns of interactions and the spread of the disease. Any trends that signal a worsening of the pandemic, we will have no choice but to return to lockdown at zero option.
Among some of the issues to be discussed in the Friday meeting include the state of county preparedness, the level of healthcare facilities preparedness, and if the county governments have been able to fully inculcate the containment measures to the wananchi at the grassroots level.
Wakili Philip Mwangali, that was the president addressing the nation on the 6th of July 2020. He's set again to take to the lectern or the podium to address the nation again on the 27th, which will be on Monday. Now, with a 2% case fatality rate compared to one of the highest countries in the continent that has recorded deaths of COVID-19, Algeria, at about 4+% since the pandemic was first confirmed in the African continent. Are we staring perhaps at another lockdown owing to the capacities of the counties across the 47 counties and the largely lower stringent measures or stringency with which the government appears to be looking at in terms of the public adherence to the guidelines?
I think that is a possibility. It's not a surprise to me, and I think to many Kenyans, that we are experiencing a spike in recorded cases of COVID-19. And I say recorded because I am certain that there are people who have COVID-19, they have not been tested, and so we do not have that data. Because, again, we do not have the capacity to test as much as we ought to be doing. So I don't think it is a surprise that we are experiencing a surge. If the government is surprised, then I'm surprised that is their reaction, because this was to be expected. The lockdown that we had initially was not really a lockdown. I mean, I think I mentioned this last time, that it was a lockdown for those who could not afford to pay their way through those barriers. But people were sneaking in and out of those containment areas. People were sneaking in and out of Nairobi, out of Mombasa, and it was crazy. I mean, you'd imagine that some people had been contracted by KRA to collect tax, given the movement they were doing in and out of these containment areas. So that lockdown did not work, and partly because you know, there are people who are considered above the law. That coupled with the fact that, you know, we have runaway corruption. Police, some of our police officers are bribed easily, and then, you know, that enclosure was porous. That is one. Two, it is likely that the president could call for another lockdown, though that will have again, you know, the economic dire economic ramifications. But as we are in the position that we are in right now, we should be looking at our public healthcare system more than we are looking at how the economy should be sustained at this point. I have also mentioned this in the past, that the way our economy is managed is not enough or is not sufficient to sustain a lockdown of the proportions that we are seeing in other countries, at least for such measures that have worked elsewhere. So if we are to have another lockdown, let us be serious about how we engage our psychosocial welfare structures in this country, because we will get to a point where we, like previously we had people who had failed to pay rent, they were unable to pay rent, they were unable to feed themselves, and so after the lockdown was lifted, they rushed up country. So if we get into that position and we have a similar situation, then we will be at a very bad place. So I think we really need to focus more on our public healthcare system rather than getting businesses back to track, in as much as those businesses and the economic sustainability works towards the quality of livelihood. Okay, and coming to you, Victor, we have seen ever since the reopening of the country by the president, county flare-ups or local flare-ups of COVID-19 pandemic cases. With lower stringency measures and a government that is largely worried that the public will not adhere to its guidelines, does it put at risk the entire COVID-19 campaign by the government?
No, Ayub, the first day that the president opened the country, we were here. And I stated clearly that I didn't support that reopening, especially of the borders of the Nairobi Metropolitan. And I didn't support it for only a few reasons. That number one, we had not contained COVID-19 properly within Nairobi, and that we were now committed to spreading it in our up countries. And sincerely, that is what has happened. Right now, we have COVID-19 in 44 counties of the 47, which is a very dangerous trend for us. So this is a bed that we made, and now we have to lie on it. Now, the lying on this bed now is what matters most, and that is what Philip is trying to address. Not whether the president is going to lock down the country or not, because that is a subject that is up to him and the task force. But then, it is now upon him to ensure that our healthcare system is able to deal with a surge in cases, a proper surge in cases, that we are able to bury the dead, and God forbid, if it happens, in a proper way, that it should happen, and that we don't see cases of people flocking into funerals like goat and sheep together, not even Lady Maureen. You know, Lady Maureen is just an example that was aired. Every single funeral of a senior citizen of this country who is endowed socially and economically has been attended in large numbers. But because some are not aired, we would only see the case of Lady Maureen. So if the government is to do anything on Monday, then we need to consider all the guidelines that were put in place. But then right now, I don't see the sense of even locking down Nairobi again. They have done what they wanted to happen, and it has already happened. And if he were to lock the country on Monday, then it means that the 6th declaration was just an ease and a change of location for guys who are in Nairobi, because I know families who could not manage in Nairobi, but now they have moved to the village where they can now manage.
Yes, Watimah.
In the first place, I don't know why the president lifted the curfew, because he lifted
the partial lockdown.
The partial lockdown, sorry. Because during that time, numbers were getting higher day by day. I remember we were at 500, 600, we are at that level. And then the president came in and lifted the partial lockdown. So I don't think it will be wise for him again to put another lockdown on Monday. Because you've given people a whole month to come back to their workplaces, to come back to their businesses. Even others have traveled.
Even flights have begun.
Even flights have begun. And then you come, and then you come on Monday and lock down again. I think economically that one will not make sense. So I think the focus here should be on how to manage our public health care, as Wakili has said here. And I think we need to now revisit on how you're implementing or enforcing these public COVID-19 guidelines. Why am I saying this? I've come to this place today with public transport, and I can see there is a very big difference on how they are handling their passengers. When COVID-19 began, you could not enter Matatu without a mask or even sanitizing your hands. I remember they used to have hand sanitizers all over, every circle, every car, every public car. But now, as we speak, you can enter Matatu without a face mask.
Okay, which means then there is some form of what appears to be negligence by the transport companies.
Yes. That is negligence on their part, but again, where is the government? Where are the police? Because these cars are not operating in the air, they're operating on land. And we have the police to ensure that these rules are being enforced. So I can say, let the Ministry of Health actually stamp its authority, and using the administration police and the other police, ensure that these laws are followed to the letter.
Okay, including leaders who
including
need to be
leaders,
held accountable.
Yeah.
Okay, Wakili Philip Mwangale, just reports in Dr. Githinji Gitahi, who is the AMREF Africa boss, says, and I quote him, Kenya does not need another lockdown. It's past that stage. Our peak season was in the months of May and June.
That is a sick man.
Is he right?
Well, I don't agree with him that our peak season was back then, because, I mean, you cannot say our peak was back then when the virus seems, according to the records that we now have, seems to be to have spread more than we were seeing in the month of May, and the fact that now people have moved across the country. But on the issue of a lockdown, I think we should now shift our attention to containment measures and look at how we will buttress our public healthcare system. That is most important, because initially we began with the wrong approach. The fact that we had people who were testing positive for the virus, and then whether they were symptomatic or not, they were still admitted in hospital. I think, borrowing from lessons that we had seen from the Western countries, we should have adopted a citizen-centered approach, where if you are asymptomatic, then we should have begun putting in place measures for self-isolation and self-care right from the start. So we stretched our health facilities right from the onset. And even right now, there are people who are asymptomatic and they are still, receiving care in hospital. That is not to say that that is wrong, but we should see a more citizen-centered approach at this time. The fact or the issue where you have the government taking the high road, and acting in a way that seems to enforce rather than collaborate with the citizenry. That is a wrong approach. And I think rather than, or aside from contributing to stigma around COVID-19, the government has also contributed to what Kelly was mentioning here, that there are people who do not think that this virus is real because of the way the government is carrying itself out. You know, when Mutahi Kagwe says something today, the next day you will see different action from the government itself. So I think right now it should be a collaborative effort between the government and the citizens, rather than the government saying, now we are locking down the country, take responsibility on your own. Personal responsibility is important, but we need to have the government collaborating with citizens, making sure that we remove the air of stigma that is around COVID-19, because it should be a normal thing to declare that you're COVID-19 positive. I think we should get to that point, so that people are not hiding and suffering in private.
Okay.
Yes.
Victor Marende then, I mean, does he have a point when he says, of course, a very highly held in esteem of his stature, Dr. Githinji Gitahi, who says that May and June were the peak times for the country for COVID-19 pandemic, because we never did mass testing, we don't have the capacity. And sort of more or less like in locking up Old Town and Isili in the counties of Mombasa and Nairobi respectively, we never did testing in the lockdown areas specifically by the government. He has a, does he have a point in any aspect from the medical perspective that here comes an expert opinion that is clearly predicting what has happened because we never did mass testing, and that some of the population largely, because he appeared before the Senate committee and he said that due to exposure to other coronaviruses previously, the African population is likely not going to be experiencing what Europe has experienced, what Asia has experienced, what the United States is experiencing, and what Europe has experienced.
Now, medically, a lockdown is only imposed for two major reasons. Now, number one, there are three reasons. Now, number one is to assess the extent of damage within that particular area. Now, for you to assess the extent of damage in that particular area, then you have to do mass testing in that particular area.
Which we never did in the cases of Eastleigh and Old Town.
And even Nairobi. Then the third reason why a place is locked down is to limit the spread to other regions. Other regions that have not been affected.
And now we have opened up Nairobi.
Now, the three reasons were not met when we partially restricted movement in and out of Nairobi. The main reason and the main thing that should have been happening in Nairobi was to ensure that everyone within the Nairobi metropolitan was tested. So that then when we open up, we know that we are opening up and we have a population of out of 4 million, we have 300,000 sick. Then the 300,000 are isolated. Then after their isolation, then we know that the remaining population is now okay. But we didn't do this. We were locked down in Nairobi. We were left to mingle within the city and no testing went on. Then after that, we were opened up, asymptomatic or not, people have traveled to the villages. That is damage. So when we talk about a possible lockdown on Monday, those are the same reasons why we need to ask ourselves, are we going to lock down the whole country so that we do mass testing? Or we are going to lock ourselves down to continue suffering in these places where we are locked down? And that is why I maintain there is no need, and that is where I agree with Gitahi. There is no need for a lockdown right now. But on the sense that our peak was in May and June, I doubt him. Because then the figures were much lower then than they are right now.
Okay, well, what if possibly that we never knew, maybe how about community transmission? Does he have a point if he cites that?
Community transmission should have happened even within the time. And that is why my point was that Nairobi should have not been opened. Okay. Because the numbers in Nairobi kept going up. You know, unlike Mombasa, where the numbers are now were fluctuating. And right now, I think the numbers in Mombasa are going down. Nairobi is experiencing an upsurge daily. And the danger right now is that the counties that border Nairobi are now suffering. I've been to Kajiado since the reopening. Kajiado is ailing. Machakos is ailing. Kiambu is ailing. And when you look at the figures right now, look at the numbers in terms of counties. Nairobi is number 1 and Kiambu number 2 since reopening. Then we have Machakos, then we have Kajiado, then we have Nakuru. Mombasa is featuring nowhere.
Okay.
And the other issue that is also important, Ayub, is that we have hospitals that have run out of capacity. Here in Nairobi, and I think this information is going to come out in bits because I don't think the government is ready to admit this fact, that hospitals that had set aside isolation wards are now full. For you to admit a COVID-19 patient, you'll have to move around this town and perhaps find bed capacity elsewhere. That should really concern us because initially when the president had said he was lifting the lockdown, his premise was that the county governments should have attained a certain bed capacity. And some county governments concentrated on that 300 bed capacity. Some had not even gotten to that point. Mm-hmm. And we are now at a level where even those that had said they have that capacity are staring at a situation where that capacity will be exhausted. So if we get to a point, and Victor had mentioned this, I think, when we were off air, that we are now in a cold season and perhaps our predisposition to the virus is going to increase. Mm. So if we get to a point where we have people who need hospital care or people who are unable to take care of themselves at home when they test positive, then we will be at a very bad place. And we must, we have the capacity. We have the capacity in terms of the economy, in terms of finances, to make sure that we do not get there. The only problem we have is that we have a culture of misappropriation of resources. So that we have money, but that money is going to places that should not even really concern us at this moment. So okay. we must really change our perspective and ensure that we are protecting lives.
And of course, the line that you have mentioned is is where the CS Mutahi Kagwe did say that if you get infected while in the counties, then you cannot be airlifted or transported back to the city because we already are overwhelmed. And the model that has dazzled the government and whether the science was appropriate in terms of the data that was fed into the modeling by the government when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic. Gentlemen, let's now turn our attention to the political developments, and here's what's coming up. On the front page of the Daily Nation, Uhuru Raila trips plot reform agenda in Parliament, and what you are seeing on the front pages are the three thematic areas of election, referendum, and public finance. And pictures of Fatma Gedi, the Wajir County Women Rep, Gladys Wanga, Homa Bay County Women MP, and Jeremiah Kioni, who of course chairs the very, very influential and powerful Committee of the National Assembly. And down there, if we can pull that up, Wikileaf will be there in some seconds, is the other three pictures, which of course incorporates the other leaders who have benefited from the Plum Committee positions, including Otiende Amolo, who is the Rarieda Member of Parliament, Florence Mutua, and the last picture is of Muturi Kigano, who is a Member of Parliament. And coming to you, Watimah Kelly, it appears that the President has gotten, and of course the three perspectives that we need to look at it from is on the electoral justice, the of course search for electoral justice, referendum debate, and the public finance in terms of the management of the country's coffers. But when you look at the changes effected at the bicameral level, has the ODM party and its leader Odinga provided the much needed political insurance where there has been insecurity when it comes to the Deputy President William Ruto in adhering to the needs by his party leader and boss, the President?
I think when you look at the new committees that have been formed and the new leadership in place, ODM has benefited so much. They're having two vice chairpersons, if I'm not wrong, and then they're having a chairperson, that is the lady from Homa Bay. So ODM as a party, I think they have benefited so much. And even the president, where he sits, I think is so much comfortable because, you know, he has managed to kick out every rebel MP, those who are perceived to be the Ruto side. They've been kicked out, and now he has his loyal people in those committees. So at a big extent, I think the president is safe. And his agenda for 2022 and the BBI is on the course. And it is here where now I want to bring my issue because I have an issue with it.
Go ahead, please.
As you can see, we are in a COVID-19 high season. Let me call it high season because the numbers are going up and up every day. But now when you look at the parliament is busy.
It's on lockdown now.
It's on lockdown, yes, but behind the scene, of course, they are very busy preparing the BBI report and the referendum and many other political issues or political scores that they are doing behind the scenes. So you can see that a government that is very busy politically, but when it comes to the issues affecting the mwananchi of Kenya, they are reluctant. That is number one. Number two, the reason why we are having BBI, the main reason why you are having BBI, I think it was because of the elections. And now they have come and they've sat down, they have come up with a BBI and they're preparing a report geared to repairing the election or the election process. So it is my prayer that even in this BBI and everything, they address that issue in particular, the election issue, and not any other issue that they are planning behind the scenes. Like, for example, having more elective posts.
Okay, you're talking about an expanded executive.
Expanded executive.
Okay.
Yes.
And Wakili Philip Wangale, when you look at the weeding out of the Ruto allies from key plum positions, both at the Senate and at the National Assembly, now the cleanup process is over. And how will the president and the ODM party leader Raila Odinga, in achieving a larger percentage or proportion of the BBI need, perhaps rearrange the furniture in the new political house that they have created now?
First, there are going to be a lot of issues arising out of this new political marriages that we've seen in the last couple of weeks. The coalitions that have come into play and you know, people rallying around the president and the Jubilee Party, at least what remains of the Jubilee Party. So there are people who will feel sidelined in the coming few days, weeks or months. There are people who are going to feel sidelined because there will not be enough positions as they hoped, or positions that will satisfy their need around those coalitions. So that is bound to happen. So there are people who are going to feel they have been betrayed in the new arrangements that they have entered into. That is a given. The other bit also that is also important to note is the fact that, and I've mentioned this before, that BBI and the fact that we want to change the constitution to fit what we consider our current circumstances is a ruse. I've been on record saying this, and I think I need to keep saying this so that I do not run into the temptation of being drawn into the argument that this is a beneficial process for us. From the onset, when you look at the 9-point agenda that you know, the president and the former prime minister presented to us, those were amazing things that we needed to work on as a country. But the solution that we sought after that 9-point agenda was, in my estimation, the wrong approach, because we thought for us to address those issues, then we had to change the constitution in a major way. Because when you're talking about changing the structure of government, that is a major change to the constitution. So it is true that we really need to address issues in this country, but the solution to those issues is not a change to the constitution. So we should be concentrating on putting our energies towards implementation of this current constitution in the way that the constitution was structured to achieve certain results. If we don't, then we risk getting ourselves to a situation in 2022 or after 2022 where we are facing issues that we faced in 2017. Electoral injustice has not been dealt with. The way we work around our election system, and this is not just about winner takes it all, you know, loser loses everything. It's not just about that. It is our culture in terms of the rule of law. It is our culture when it comes to political engagements and campaigns. We need to address that, and that is not being addressed by, you know, changing a few laws that will suit certain political arrangements. Okay,
in the end, you feel perhaps, or you are skeptical that this is likely not going to be addressing the deeper political problem or the issue itself.
I'm not even skeptical, I am certain.
Okay.
I am certain.
So in 2022, another cycle of handshake begins, and then on to 2027.
We will but now in 2022, we might not experience what we experienced in 2017, because we have, you know, the larger proportion of the political class coming together. So we might have a break. Our half term will come in 2022, but we might run into the same problems in 2027.
Okay, I'll come to the IEBC aspect, because there has been the lacking aspect when it comes to the Kruger Commission recommendations that must have been implemented by IEBC in 2013 and in 2017 in the external audit, and of course the process, the thrust to have electoral justice in Kenya. Victor Marende, what do you think is the intent behind the purge by the president's party and the ODM now party, saying that it will back up, it will support the president's cause in parliament, and what does it portend for opposition politics in Kenya?
You know, parliament has no opposition and ruling government. Parliament has minority and majority.
Which implies to the government side and the opposition side. In this case, John Barry and Amos Kimunya.
Whichever way you look at it, we only have minority side and majority side.
Majority side is the government, right?
Yeah. And my thinking is that in a bid to ensure that service delivery is effective and that Kenyans get service to the core, then leadership should be upon you on merit, and above all, because then there are political seats on loyalty. So merit coupled with loyalty then puts you on high ground to get a position. And what I've seen in the current constitution of committees and change of leadership is that those who merit more than those who were there before, and those who are more loyal than those who were there before, are now having positions. But then just to shed some light, because I've also had BBI being painted in a way that it cannot solve anything. I would really not want my friend to commit his energy on the wrong clauses within the BBI. And I would invite you to take the book and read it keenly, Philip, because I know you are an avid reader.
I have.
And, you know, when we talk about the government, the government structure that we intend to change, I want to invite you to page 106, 107, and 105, 106, where we talk about the government structure. Now, look at what the BBI is proposing keenly on page 106, and then couple it down with what is there in page 111, where we are talking about a prime minister. And when we talk about a prime minister, I want to tell you that in our structure, we are also reducing the wage bill. And I will tell you why. Now, we are proposing that an MP is the person to become a prime minister. And in the same proposal on page 111 of the document, we are saying that the prime minister will only earn as an MP.
Which means about 700,000,
yes.
thereabout.
So then we save the country of ensuring that then we pay another new person into the arrangement. Now, when we talk about CSS becoming parliamentarians, look at what the document says on page 108, 109 about the position of a CS and what needs to be attained to be a CS. Now, it is very clear that a CS will only earn as an MP and CSS will become MPs. Okay. Now look at the current situation where we are in. We have CSS who are not members of parliament and are earning independently from the members of parliament. So when we have such an arrangement, then it ensures that the money that is earned by current CSS is saved to something else. Now, that in itself gets us to a certain place that is very good. Now look at what the document proposes in terms of SRC. It is now empowered and not like it can be muzzled by the National Assembly now. Okay, now to the youths who are us now, Ayub, we are proposing a 7-year tax holiday when you are starting a small business. This is something that needs to excite the youths on page 113. Okay. Now you move to page 116, we are having biashara mashinani. These are things that can...
All economic empowerment, Victor.
Exactly.
Worth mentioning, but it's very important that we had a bloated Mkatinusu government, if I may call that, in 2009, from 8, of course, when we finally ended the post-election violence following the mediation by the former UN Secretary General, the late Kofi Annan. But in looking at that, we had more than 42 ministers and more than even 50, we had more than a bloated cabinet for that matter.
You had 20 cabinet secretaries and 42,
about 42 cabinet ministers. Yeah, thereabout. Now, looking at that, we had more or less an extended or expanded executive at the top. It never addressed our problem. No. My question politically is then, besides, of course, wanting to cut down on the expenditure of parliament, how does this politically perhaps give this country calm, sanity, and political sobriety after every electoral cycle? Briefly, as we go on break.
Now, on the political sanity and calmness that is required, you go to cohesion on page 101 of that document. Now, on cohesion then, we have a prime minister, a deputy prime minister, a president, and a vice president. Now, we are trying to ensure that all these do not come from one region, as presently.
Which our current constitution addresses.
Now, whether it addresses it or not, it has not been so loud as it should be. So then I believe when we have more of these positions, then the concentration at the top is reduced so that at least, because the common thinking of Kenyans, you know, as we also talk about this, the constitution is not cast on stone. Constitutions are implemented to human beings. So when you say it is in the current constitution and there are only 2 individuals there, then the common Kenyan thinking is that when that person is a Luo, then Luos are represented. So why not have 5 individuals there who are members of parliament are not eating up into our money,
your point is noted. But they ought to have been the energy between 2013 and 17 to implement the 2010 Kenyan constitution. That's very key and important.
The 2 men at the helm never supported the new constitution, so we didn't expect anything.
No problem. Of course, we know the opposer.
We
are going on break because of timing. And Watimah, I'll see the sentiments. And the other very important point that we need to be, of course, noting is on the IEBC, because our problems have been stemming from the electoral cycle. 1997, Kibaki did, of course, petition. The court quashed the petition. In 2007, the ugly skirmishes of the elections, of the post-election violence. And then in 2013, the Supreme Court settled the matter. 2017, the same court under David Maraga did say that Wafula Chebukati-led commission did commit illegalities and irregularities in the 2017 elections. And that will be, of course, our expansion point of the discussion here after the break here on the broadcast. The number is 0791 478 990, the hashtag on Twitter, NewDayKE, the short SMS code is 40920. We are back after the break on the broadcast. Good afternoon, welcome back. We are into the final segment here. Victor, Watimah and Philip never, of course, paused for the break. They were continuing with the discussion off the mic, and your time is appreciated, gentlemen. Watimah, I was on you before we went on break. Yes, you had a point?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, please.
I want to disagree with my brother Victor about BBI or the mandate of BBI. If we go back in history, we'll know why BBI came in place. It was because of an election that was not respected. That is the reason why we have BBI.
That is an assumption.
Assumption.
I will tell you why. Let me just respond to that bit. Now, it is an assumption because when the two leaders met, they discussed and agreed on 9 points.
Thank you.
And the 9 points, election was only one of the 9.
Yeah, but election was number 1. Number 2 was inclusivity, right? Election number 1, number 2, inclusivity.
But we agree, Victor does agree with me, that election causes as much macro effect than inclusivity, because there has been decry of the cabinet composition since 2013 based on political appointments, awarding political cronies, but electoral problem has been one that has had an all cross-board effect when it comes to across the country.
All of them are intertwined.
Intertwined, but electoral injustice, the handling of our election process has been a key factor here. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So my argument is BBI should be more focused on handling elections in Kenya. Elections.
Do you mean they do while?
I'm coming to the other point.
How about the other points?
With the other
points which are very important?
We deal with the elections and inclusivity, because with the elections comes inclusivity. Kenyans will feel like no one, our tribe is not at the top, so, and all that and all that. About the youth, we have so many institutions in this country that are tasked to do the work of the youth. We have the Ministry of Sport, we have another department in the ICT ministry. We have so many other departments and other institutions that are supposed to deal with the youths, right? And then even about the inclusivity issue.
Kelly, were you present in this country when we were fighting for the Youth Council?
I was present.
You were present?
Yes.
And you know how hard the system was against the Youth Council?
Yes.
And to this date, you know, the Youth Council chapter has been changed to be a single appointment of the president. So,
I was coming to that.
We cannot.
Let him finish.
I was coming to that. My point is, it's not about the position or who holds the position, but it's about the integrity and the leadership aspect of a person who holds that office. Because when you look at our constitution now, it is only how many years old? Around 10 years now. 10 years
Next
old.
month, 10 years.
First of all, it has not been implemented fully. We agree on that, right? It has not been implemented fully. Number 2, the way it is being implemented, in patches. When the president feels like today I want to do ABCD, he does. He does it according to what he feels like, or whatever suits his interest and everything, and the people around him. So for me, it's not about the position of the prime minister or the position of the president, but the caliber of the person who holds that position. Already we have laws. We have a good constitution, we have laws and institutions that are mandated to do different functions. But because of this person and the caliber of this person, these institutions and this constitution, they are not working, you see. So even if we change the constitution today, and then 2022 we change the constitution again, and then we still get the same type of a person holding that office, it will not benefit us as Kenyans.
The BBI is handling that.
Okay, yes, Philip.
Let me step in here. First, let me begin with the issue of the youth, because I am very passionate about the youth in this country, as I believe we all are. We encountered a problem, and this was the genesis of our problem, when the youth started being considered a marginalized category in need of protection, rather than a very integral part in the leadership of this country and the economy of this country. And so we were then considered as, you know, people who need their hands held up,
Yes.
who need some sort of support to get to the top. And when it got to that point where the youth, the mindset of the youth was turned to a certain direction where it will be considered that if you're given a certain appointment, then you're being done a favor as a young person. If you are given, you know, tenders, and it is unfortunate that we can have, in as much as these, you know, steps in the structure of affirmative action towards the youth, it's unfortunate that we can have, you know, certain tenders set aside for the youth, you know, for persons with disabilities. Well, that we can discuss later, but for the youth especially.
Okay.
We are not an endangered species.
Thank you.
We are not, you know, people who are in need of protection from the government or from the elderly. We form an integral part of the population.
Okay, which is very key.
And we must participate. On the second bit.
Okay. You'll express that. Allow me to fix your mic, and then my sound man is coming here to fix your mic.
You know,
but
we must participate here.
Okay, participation of the young people, but let me just couple it up with the IEBC problem, which appears to be a perennial and the stemming point of all the problems in this country because of the one side of the political divide feeling that they are not contented, including members of the public who feel that the IEBC does not conduct elections based on the constitution and the election law. I mean, how do we then set up this devoid of the political party belonging, now that we are seeing key committee positions in parliament that are likely going to restructure the IEBC? And how do we breathe life into an institution, a commission that has largely dwindled trust when it comes to the public posturing and Kenyans believing that it can conduct credible elections?
Now, let me just respond to this, then I come to that.
Go ahead, please.
Now, in saying that youth must participate, you know, that is very theoretical. Theoretically, it is on paper that youth must participate properly. But practically, vitu kwa grao,
different.
It is very different. So when we tag the youth must participate, we must tie it to the fact that participate to what extent. And that is why affirmative action came. Because it had always been said that women must participate. But to what extent did they participate in our politics until affirmative action came to their rescue? So I agree that youths are not an endangered species, Philip. But then, to the extent that youth need to be involved, and to be involved in leadership is very integral, because then youths are disadvantaged in terms of these positions. In fact, despite our numbers, I would tell you that the love for money of the youth and the biting economic times would not allow them to vote for a youth who is giving them nothing and leave an elderly person who is giving them money. That we all agree.
Okay.
So however much the youth are there in numbers and they must participate, we have to look at the factors limiting them from participating fully into leadership. Now, on to the IEBC issue. Now, IEBC has been very cumbersome in this country in conducting elections, and it is the main reason that we are in the positions we are in today, majorly based on their affiliation politically, which we agree no human being is apolitical. Every human being is political. So they've had their sides of their divide that they support all through. But then, they must be seen to be doing the right thing.
Okay.
That is what they have not been seen to be doing. When Kivitu headed this electoral commission, the Electoral Commission of Kenya, I think between 95 to maybe 2007 when he messed up, we really had a divided country politically, except for 2002, and all Kenyans agreed that the elections were fair, save for those who lost. Now, we tried a hybrid kind of system in the IPPG in 1997, and it was lauded for doing something that was a bit accurate. Now, came 2002, we appreciated the results. 2007 was not appreciated by everyone, despite the fact that we appreciated the referendum results just 2 years before that election.
And the IEBC.
Yes. Then we brought in IEBC and headed by Sakaja in 2013. Then we've had Wafula Chebukati in 2013. And there is that systemic rot within that particular department that needs to be dealt with. And to this moment now, I agree that it is not with the chairperson or the CEO. I think the problem lies deep within the systems.
Okay.
And what forms the IEBC. The processes needs to be adhered to properly. And that is why I agree with the CJ Maraga. He said that apart from that, the fact that the law was not obeyed in conducting of this process, elections are not events. They are processes. So the processes were not adhered to.
Okay.
So I believe that yes, we need to strengthen the structures that make up the process of getting to a
and Wakili.
Yes. Now that my mic is back.
No problem. Go ahead, please. I had to cut you short, but go ahead. Now finish
I
up.
can finish up on what I was saying, and tying that to what Victor is saying. And I think I have come up with my own VAR in terms of addressing what really is the problem. And the V stands for values. In as much as the BBI touches on values, which should be our concentration really, that we need to address our moral mindset and our value system. Because when he's talking about underlying issues in terms of systems and structures, we have people behind those systems and structures. And if those people are rotten, then you'd expect that they will influence the systems. And the A is for accountability, and this is where elections come into play. Free and fair elections. So we have a situation where we have laws that address the structure, but we have failed to get people who are accountable to those laws, people who can actually deliver free and fair elections. Because the issue of people feeling disenfranchised politically arises partly from elections. Because if you feel that you have been cut out unfairly from having the people or the persons you have elected into leadership.
Free, fair, and verifiable.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and verifiable. Well, if it is fair, then it is verifiable. But anyway, so if you have people who do not believe in an electoral process that brings or in which they can express themselves in terms of who should be elected, then we would fall into this cycle that we are falling into.
Okay.
So that is A. R is resources, and how resources are trickling down to Mwananchi. If you have a skewed way of, taking down resources, if a certain region is favored more than the other, then you'll have those people, boiling up, and you'll have a certain region feeling that they have been left out, not because their person is not in leadership, although that is what will be the expression of their discontent, but because they are not feeling the effect of resources. And we have a constitution that prescribes in Article 170 onwards on how finances and national resources should devolve to counties and nationally. And I think that is the reason we are having this debate on division of revenue, which we should really address soberly again. So if we are not having resources being allocated and being exercised in a manner that benefits the whole country, then however much we change the constitution, perhaps every 2 years or every 5 years, we will still get there.
Okay, Watimah, then the standing out point here when it comes to, or when you mentioned the Electoral Commission in Kenya, is the lacking aspect of conducting or presiding over a process that is fair to all. I mean here, lacking being the ample umpire when it comes to being the fair referee and presiding over the electoral process. Not definitely cash-strapped, one of the most expensive elections in the history of the world, more than 50 billion Kenya shillings in 2017. That's even not used in some European countries, which are powerful economies when it comes to the ranking of the global economy. And then you have personnel, not of course understaffed. They had all the commissioners in place. What do you think then that perhaps might be the consideration point of reconstituting, re-engineering an IEBC that not only in 2017 will preside over an election, but in the subsequent elections, and that is in 2027, 2032, 2037, that Kenyans will be able to get results and that their votes are counted to put in place proper leadership that's needed in Kenya?
Thank you, Ayub. First and foremost, I think IEBC usually do a great job when it comes to elections.
Where is the problem then? When the court says that you have presided over an election that is
the only
full
problem
of
comes in
illegalities
on,
and irregularities.
Presidential elections. There is where we always have a problem. Actually, a major problem, or I can call it a very big problem, because those elections are perceived not to be true and fair. Now, even if we take an angel and give that position of IEBC today and tell that angel Gabriel, may you run our elections, and we never respect that institution and what the law is saying about that institution or the mandate of that institution when it comes to law, to elections, we'll never have free and fair elections. Why am I saying this? All these people who are chosen to be chairmen and chairmen of these elections, have been credible people. They were appointed very well, and we
doubt.
trusted.
You were. Chebukati was number 9.
Let me just finish.
Let him finish.
I
You will respond
believe
to him.
Chebukati was very credible. But again, when Chebukati is given this role to play, he's not given a free hand to hold fair and free elections. We find another hand coming from I don't know where, coming to control presidential elections.
So in other words, you're talking about manipulation
Manipulation
of an independent
yes.
commission.
So what our solution there is, can we be able to respect these institutions? Not just only IEBC. We have ACC. We have these other institutions that are given, even the judiciary. We saw the judiciary the other day crying that they are not able to perform their mandate and functions well because the executive is interfering. So can we have an institution whereby is respected and given that mandate fully to do their role? If we can have that, then we can have a free and fair election.
Away from the swaying hand that you have pointed out.
Yes.
Now the conclusion.
Yes, as you finish up briefly, and Victor, of course, will respond to what Watimah said.
I think then the conclusion is that Chebukati was incredible.
Exactly.
Not credible.
Yes.
And he said he can't guarantee a credible election.
Yes.
And some days. That was the 17th of October 2017.
So going forward,
yes,
Chebukati should not even continue holding or being the chairman of IEBC, first of all. And then we should have the IEBC reconstituted and have a new team in place. But again, if we don't give this team the free will to do their mandate, they'll never deliver a credible election.
Yes,
this is the other bit, that we are not having, and this is a perennial problem, we're not having integrous people being appointed to these positions. Because if you're a person of integrity, then you are beyond influence. So if you have a person who is not beyond influence, who cannot stand on their feet, and who cannot execute a mandate that is so clear, then however much you have an independent decision, they will still be swayed. I don't know if we are making a final submissions. Yeah. Okay. So I think that is the point we need to start on, and that goes to our moral fabric as society, because these people are appointed from a section of Kenyans. So if you have 70 people applying to a certain position and the 70 people are not of good moral standing, then definitely you will have an individual that is warped in those offices. In conclusion, and when it comes to elections, and I think we have seen this happening in Western Kenya, going by what has been happening there in this last couple of weeks. We have a brand of politicians that are election profiteers. So they benefit from the environment and the atmosphere around elections, and for them it is a business enterprise. And amongst these election profiteers is another improved breed of politicians that I would call meal-card politicians. And these are some of the individuals that are causing us problems, because they would want to benefit financially rather than contribute to an election process that is healthy and that contributes towards citizens expressing themselves. So then what these kinds of politicians do is that they create a certain aura that is false. So they would whip up emotions in their backgrounds that would confuse the entire country, and you would think that a certain section from their side is leaning towards a certain direction. And then when elections come, the conclusion is the opposite. So I think going forward, we also need to look at the quality of people we elect into office, because they determine the direction of policy, they determine the direction of constitution and other laws implementation.
Yes, Victor.
So that is something that we need to address.
Yes, Victor Marende.
Now, in my closing remarks, I believe politics in this country ails from political parties, because then they are major players. And as a respecter of the democracy of this country, I believe it is time we need to really implement the Political Parties Act 2010 fully, ensure that these parties are institutionalized. Then, at that point, we'll be able to get good leaders to these offices and we won't be able to complain. Two, I really want to also echo the words of the BBI in page 105, where we say, let's devolve these political parties. Let's not center them in Nairobi. That would also ensure that the internal democracy within these parties are accurate. And apart from that, then we are able to scout political
leaders right from the grassroots and who are up to date. That ensures that there is national participation in these elections. And when you participate appropriately within your party, then you are able to elect the person of your choice. And then the net effect is that you don't decry of the person at the top, because then you have a person that you are really interested in right from the ground. So then I believe that we need to strengthen our political parties accurately. We need to ensure that the office of the Registrar of Political Parties is substantially and accurately run. Then on the bit of IEBC, however independent IEBC is seen to be, when it is still the prerogative of the president to appoint one person of the three, then it still becomes a problem, because then the same president might be seeking elections in that upcoming elections. So then I want it to be us, judges are presented to the president, appoint, don't select. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victor Marende. Your time is appreciated. Asante sana, anthropologist and commentator on governance and political developments. At the center is Wakili Philip Mwangale, who is consultant on leadership governance issues. Wakili, thank you. Your time is appreciated. Thank you. And Watimah Kelly is youth leader and commentates on governance and political developments too in the country. The complexity on the IEBC, of course, will be a subject matter that is very key and important in the going forward of the country and in the next electoral cycle, to be specific. We come to a close here on the broadcast with the mapping of the COVID-19 pandemic globally. Here's what's coming up on the CNN health mapping. And you can see the Latin American part of the world and America are now the concerning points for the World Health Organization, while it appears that the cloud of concerns are clearing up in Asia. In Africa, though concerns are expressed by the World Health Organization, the numbers are not as projected before by the George Washington State University, and equally one that was done by the University of Nairobi, a study that was presented before the Kenyan Senate. While in Europe, there appears to be now the reopening up of the economies, and for the first time in more than 20 years, an event that never happened, the EU leaders had met and had promised a package of about $800 billion to run economies again in the European continent, and to be specific, the Eurozone in Europe. We will see you tomorrow at the same time. Bye-bye.